Hey y'all, and welcome back to my channel. Today I just wanted to cover some basics about sewing machines. So whether you have a very more of a top of the line one like this one, this Janome Memory Craft 9450, or if you have a much simpler machine like this one here, the basics of a sewing machine are pretty much the same. So I just want to cover some of the basics, if you've just bought a sewing machine, if you're new at this, and things you need to know as you unpack and set up your sewing machine. So I'm going to use this sewing machine as reference just because there's less buttons and things like that. You notice I already have it plugged in, the lights are on and everything. So some of the things you're going to notice first off, this one actually is computerized, which means it doesn't have the dials. Some sewing machines will have the little dials that you turn. This one doesn't. It's actually computerized, and you press the buttons in order to change the stitches, which it shows down here which numbers are the stitches. This one actually shows also what foot you'll need for your machine. But most machines are going to have some sort of a dial or a little slide that looks like this that has the little arrows. This is the speed of the machine. Right now it's set on the slowest possible. And now it's set on the fastest possible. This indicates how fast your machine will go if you floor it. If you put your foot all the way down on the foot pedal as low as it will go, that's as fast as it'll go. So if you have it on the slow setting, it's going to go slow no matter how hard you press on that foot pedal. So if you're a beginner, that's probably where you want to start out. Machines on the front will usually have a reverse. It kind of looks like a U-turn button. This is also called a lock stitch. This will actually send your machine backwards so you can lock a stitch at the beginning or the end. This machine also has a few other buttons, the start and stop and these, which you probably won't find on a regular, just a basic sewing machine, so I'm not going to cover those. One of the other things you'll find on a sewing machine is a wheel on the right hand side. This is called a flywheel, and you can turn it forwards or backwards. You always want to try to turn it forwards, that's the best. And I'll see if you can see it as I'm turning it, the needle will actually go up and down. Okay. You'll also, on the top of your machine, you will have a spot for your thread. Some of them are sideways like this, some of them actually stick straight up. You'll also have, and you usually will get a little package of things in it like this, but these little discs, they're called thread caps, and that's what you put on the end of your thread spool here, and it keeps your thread from coming off, and you want to use the one that's the closest to the size of the thread. You'll also have a bobbin winder, which is this right here. It's got a little post, and then this is like an actual stopper. It will stop your bobbin automatically when it gets full. You'll also usually have on a machine, usually it's going to either be drawn and written like this in dark, or sometimes it's just raised. It's almost like Braille. It's not darkened out, but it will actually tell you how to thread your machine. It gives you the path. So like on here to thread, here's your number 1, so you go around here. Your number 2 is down. You go all the way down here. Here's your number 3 to go around. You go back up, number 4, so you come around here, around, back down. Here's your number 5. You go through there, and then you thread your needle. When you thread your needle, you always want to go from the front to the back of the needle, so it's straight in there. This one will also has on the top, shows how you're supposed to thread your bobbin in order to wind it. So it has it going number 1, which is this right here. So it goes from your thread around this and then through your bobbin. It shows you going from the outside to the inside through a little hole in the bobbin. And then number 3, you push this together like this, and that engages it to wind your bobbin. Some of the few other things you'll see on a machine is usually a dial like this. Sometimes it's a little dial at the top, but this is your tension. This is how much force, pardon the dust. This is how much force is placed on your thread. This usually comes on your machine factory set. Don't touch it. If you're going to have a problem with your machine, that is usually the last option. Don't play around with that a lot, because that just causes more problems. There are two different styles of machines. You have one that has a drop-in bobbin like this, which drops in from the top, and then you'll have some machines that have a side bobbin. The bobbin goes in from the side. The most common one is the drop-in like this. And it shows you again how you put your bobbin in there. This actually opens up like this, and there your bobbin sits. Let me put that back on. This right here is your presser foot. Sometimes you will get extra or different feet in with your machine. This right here is called a throat plate. And then you have feed dogs. Feed dogs are these little things right under here. They almost look like little teeth, little zigzags. And as you sew, those move. And the pressure between your presser foot and the feed dogs is what guides your fabric through. You'll also have a button. This one is way up here, or a little lever. This lowers or raises your presser foot. You want to make sure that when you thread your machine, your presser foot is always raised. When it's in the upright raised position, there's no tension on the thread, and you can very easily pull your thread. Whereas when you lower it, the tension's engaged, and it's a lot harder to pull your thread. So you want to make sure that that's up. Most machines, too, also come with an automatic threader. So if you have problems threading your needle because the hole is so small, a lot of times you have an automatic threader here to help you. Some machines like this one actually have a free arm, which comes off like this, and it usually has a little, some sort of a little box or something to store stuff in. But this comes off and allows smaller access if you are doing a small project, like maybe a sleeve or something like that. It doesn't have to go over such a large area. And then again, you have, whether you have dials or you have a screen like this, you can change what stitch you do. So say if I want to do a triple stitch like this, I would set it on 4. You're also going to have a stitch width and a stitch length. Okay. Again, some of these on some machines are just little dials that you do. But like your most common stitch obviously is going to be your straight stitch. Your straight stitch, they come when you turn it on like this, it's factory set. But there is obviously no width on a straight stitch. Your stitch length, again, the smaller the number, the smaller the stitch. Usually a standard medium, middle of the road stitch is going to be about a 2.5. Usually the stitches go from 0 to 5. So like a 5 would be a long stitch, like if you're doing gathers, things like that. But normally standard sewing would be around a 2.5 to 3, which would be your pretty standard. You can see on this large machine here, this is more of a professional machine, top of the line, but you have some of the same features. Okay, you still have your lock stitch or your back stitch, your throat plate. It still shows you how to, this one actually lifts up like this. It still shows you how to thread your machine, where like this one is more of like the raised braille, like I was talking about, versus the actual inked on. You have your speed. You still have your your to raise and lower your machine, which this one's in the very back, your throat plate. I'm going to show you something on your throat plate on this one because it's a little easier to see, but your throat plate will have these lines. These lines will actually have measurements. There's half, there's 5/8, there's 3/4, and you'll have them again written here. This helps you when you guide your seam allowance. Your seam allowance is the amount of fabric between your stitching line and the edge of the fabric. Seam allowances vary depending on what you're sewing. But if it tells you it has a 1/4 inch seam allowance, or sew this with a 5/8 of an inch seam allowance, then you would guide your edge of your fabric, say, against the 5/8 of an inch line, and then your needle will automatically sew a 5/8 of an inch seam allowance on there. So these are some of the very basics on a sewing machine. Things that, as I've taught sewing to people, that I teach them the same thing. Again, every machine's a little bit different, but the basics are the same. Read through your owner's manual, and if it has videos or anything like that, watch your videos to get familiar with it, and then just practice. Get some scrap fabric and practice sewing. If you do have problems with the thread knotting or breaking or something like that, number one cause for issues is your thread is not threaded properly through your machine. So take out your top thread, take out your bobbin, rethread it. That's usually the number one cause of issues with your stitches or your machine jamming or something like that, is you've missed a step. It's not under a bar or in a tension or something like that. So rethread all of that. Make sure you're using a good quality thread. The cheaper threads actually have more of a tendency to break, and they actually leave more lint in your machine. So I know sometimes you look at the price of thread and you go, my gosh, I can get the little cheap spool for 50 cents versus $3. The $3 thread is going to be a lot better for your machine and will cause less headaches for you than like a 50-cent spool of thread. Also, make sure you're using the right needles. All home sewing machine needles have a flat back, which goes towards the back of your machine. To take out or put in a needle, your machine should have a little screw here that you unscrew. Your needle will pull straight out. You can put the new one all the way up and then tighten your screw. Okay, there's different needles for different fabrics and things like that, which we'll go over in a different video. So these are some of the basics. I hope this was helpful. Please like and subscribe, as I'll be posting new informative videos and also videos on DIY projects and sewings and things like that. See you later.